The panchayat regime in Nepal was not squeaky clean. It was pretty much corrupt. That's why the Nepali peoples could not withstand the regime. It ruled the country for 30 years and with aspirations for democracy, human rights, accountability in and transparency in government systems. The people hit the streets and toppled the regime. Of course, the international scenario was favorable for change. It was the winds of change were blowing in Europe, Eastern Europe in particular. The communist regimes were just collapsing one after the other. The Soviet Union was like biting the dust. The regime was, it had bitten the dust. That in that context, the changes in Nepal should be read because Nepal is not an isolated isle. It is very much a part of the international system. The winds of change blowing in a particular continent in any part of the world affects Nepal as well. People wanted an end to corruption, an end to misrule. People wanted democracy, people wanted human rights, transparency, and accountability. That's why they brought about the changes, the epoch making changes of the 1990s. And then another wave swept the country in the mid 2000s. Despite these changes, what has happened in Nepal is people's expectations have remained unrealized. Their desire for democracy, human rights, a corruption free governance system, accountability, and transparency have remained a dream. One after the other, mega corruption scandals, mega corruption scams have just made the headlines over the years. In this context comes the Lalita Nibas land grab. We'll be talking about this massive grab of government property uh, thanks to nexus between the politicians, bureaucrats, and business interests. And we'll also talk about the Bhutanese refugee scam. Welcome to the program. The presentation is based partly on the editorial published in the Annapurna Express Daily. Who would not want their own plot close by the Prime Minister's official residence at Baluathar, all for free? If wishes were horses, beggars would ride them, wouldn't they? Close by the famous address lies swathes of land, a huge property at a prime location. That's the government owned land called Lalita Nivas. Today's presentation centers on this prime property and these efforts, sustained efforts, conspiracies, in fact, to grab that prime piece of land at the heart of Kathmandu. How could this prime property not have drawn the attention of the all powerful land mafia, the dreaded land mafia that is, in Nepal's context, is no less powerful than the Italian mafia? Well, it did. Pretty soon, a nexus developed around some powerful politicians, wily bureaucrats, and equally powerful business interests. The owner of a supermarket chain, in particular, pretty soon new private owners of the government property emerged. As they say, with a little help from friends in high places, nothing is impossible, right? But the plot does not end there. In fact, it thickens. A widening police probe, launched a couple years ago, has brought some powerful figures from politics, bureaucracy, and the business community under its dragnet. Out of the seven people arrested in a recent swoop, a former joint secretary, a former undersecretary, and a private individual were released within a few hours of their arrest after a Supreme Court interim order instructed the authorities to probe the individuals by keeping them out of custody. This order is like what prompted this order to keep the suspects out of custody is like something that the Supreme Court of Nepal should bother to explain. Notably, former Commissioner of the Election Commission Sudhir Kumar Saha, Director of Bhat Patini Supermarket Min Bahadur Gurung, Dharma Prasad Gautam, and Gopal Kharki remain in police custody. This as part of the investigation that has already netted a former Deputy Prime Minister, two former land reforms ministers, and three government secretaries. As the investigation into the infamous land grab continues, a couple of questions arise. How could the government leadership of the time not have known what was going on under its very powerful nose? Remember, this Lalita Nivas is located it just abuts the Prime Minister's official residence in Baluata. So, how could the High Office not have known about this unfolding scam? It remains a mystery. And what will happen to this high profile scam? Will politicization of crime and criminalization of politics going on unabated in this country scuttle the probe, much to the relief of more high profile figures at the cost of the people's right to know uncensored truth? Many probes have been brushed under the carpet to just whitewash uh, the involvement of powerful figures in scams galore in this country. Questions like these naturally arise. Why? Because the investigation into another high profile scam, if you remember, I'm talking about the Bhutanese refugee scam. This Bhutanese refugee scam investigation has raised similar uncomfortable questions. The government should be mindful that thorough probes into high profile scams and action against those found guilty are necessary to cleanse the governance system and restore people's faith in it. The people's faith in this system is at an all time low. That is what appears if the public frustration vented through social media and other forums are anything to go by. The government should not forget that half-hearted proofs will not serve the purpose. Chances are that they may be seen as an as attempts to settle old scores. Therefore, the onus is on the government to prove that it has no other motive behind these probes than bringing out the uncensored, bringing out the uncomfortable truth. The sooner the government realizes that the public deserves the whole truth and nothing but the truth, the better it will be for the government, for the people and the country as well. We have come to the end of this edition of Soft Talk. We request you to subscribe to this channel, comment on our presentation, and press that like button for a small team promoting citizen journalism, for a small team like ours that is trying to be your true voice. This means a lot to us. So we request you to throw your weight behind this initiative. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.